Perfect. So we're going to start recording. Welcome everybody. My name is Alan Weisberg. I will be one of your hosts for the day. We're very proud to present this virtual user group meeting. We're combining Illinois and Wisconsin into our Midwest kind of user group for Q2. And we have a lot of very interesting topics to cover. We know you're busy, so we try to kind of keep them as short as possible, but as interesting as possible. Let's look at the agenda for today, so you know what we're going to be doing. I think that's next slide. Perfect. So Marie and I are going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and what what the point of our user groups are. And here's the agenda. Once we're done with our little spiel, we're going to have Ryan from PM Square, Ryan Dolly, come in and tell us all about the new Cognos 11.1.6. Very excited about that. And then Ryan will jump in and continue talking about Framework Manager and how to convert those FM models that we all love into data modules. That becomes much easier for us to work with. Then Jason Bennett from IBM is going to dive into Jupyter Notebook. Then we'll get into Planning Analytics Primer. Brian Moore from PM Square will do that. One of the reasons why we wanted to do that is because TM1 still continues to be hot, and analytics continues to be hot. By hot, meaning there's lots of customers that still want it. You can build very good rates on them, and if you're considering adding that to your repertoire, we wanted to make sure that you have that primer. Then we'll take a break. Once we come back from break, Ryan is going to look at the continuum of the Cognos Analytics, so what's in store. Then Jason from IBM is going to talk about what happened in IBM Think this year. Then Marie is going to jump in and talk about the IBM Communities. So it's a really great resource, and we should all be connected to it. I know I'm not, so I'm looking forward to looking and connecting there. Then I'll spend a little time talking about the Ultimate Software has a product called UltiPro, and they have a BI component that could be very relevant to you and another kind of niche market, if you like. And then we'll close. So tightly packed, lots of useful information. We hope you'll enjoy it. Next slide, just a little bit about myself. Before we get to Marie, a little bit about myself. I've been doing Cognos for about 21 years. Have been involved in all sorts of the BI kind of place in terms of consulting, training, sales, running corporations. I love Cognos. Cognos has been the constant in my career. I used to work for Cognos before starting my own companies, so really, happy that that Cognos, in a way, has afforded me to have the lifestyle and the career that I have had so far. And you can connect me on LinkedIn or find me in other places. If you just search Alan Weisberg on Google, there are only two people. One is a really nice lawyer in LA, and I'm the other guy. Perfect. Let's get to Marie, and Marie, take the reins.
All right, next slide, please. So I'm Marie Andre. I work at Madison College in Wisconsin in their Institutional Research and Effectiveness Department. I've had various roles over many years, developer, manager, product owner, scrum master. I pretty much say, if you want me to do it, I'll figure it out and I'll do it. So I've had about 15 years of BI experience, most of that business objects and Cognos, and of that time, about 8 years of that was Cognos. And I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me using, it's just Marie-Andre. All right, next slide is just a quick introduction of what we are about. So the purpose of these user groups, if you are not a member yet, is to network and promote professional enrichment of our members through shared experiences, insight, and knowledge around the span of IBM Analytics software. We try to have quarterly meetings. So there's a Wisconsin group and Illinois group. Again, we try to have quarterly meetings. I know for the Wisconsin group, at least, I think it's been quite a while since we've had a meeting. But within those meetings, you'll find a mix of functional and technical topics across the analytics spectrum. It's geared toward both business and IT attendees. And when we do them in person, we try to hold them at kind of different locations throughout the state so that you can attend in person at least maybe once a year. However, now that we're doing them virtually, we might decide to just stick with it because more people are able to attend because they don't have to travel. We do have user group networks on LinkedIn. You can feel free to search for Illinois IBM Analytics User Group or the Wisconsin IBM Analytics User Group and stay connected there as well. Next slide, please. The last slide I have is just a huge thanks to both IBM and PM Square. They've been instrumental in getting this presentation kind of organized and getting Alan and I on the same page and getting us connected, and also putting together really great content and taking a lot of time, I guess, to put that content together and present to you today. So big thanks to them. And before I transition it over to the next presenter, I'm going to do one more quick poll. So if you have a chance, please answer it. So which IBM technology software do you work with? And you can choose more than one. All right, it says about half the people have voted. So we'll give it a couple more seconds. All right, let's close it down. Looks like the majority are Cognos Analytics, so that's good. We have lots of topics on that. Next up, TM1, some predictive analytics. All right, good. I think this will align well then with the topics that we have planned. And I will say at the end, we'll talk about kind of how you can influence what topics we present in future sessions as well. So thank you for taking the time to answer that. I will now transition it to Ryan Dolly at PM Square. He's going to be talking about what's new with Cognos 11.1.6.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, just can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes,
okay.
yep.
All right. So I've shared my screen. It says that it looks okay. So I just want to confirm that. And then I am a webcam guy. So I'll turn on my webcam too. I'm not sure how it displays that in GoToWebinar, but whatever. Thank you. Thanks for the intro, you guys. That was great. So I want to start off by saying welcome to everyone who's attending today. It's really great to have such a good turnout for an event like this. And I know I've got a number of customers and former colleagues who I see have joined. So it's really great to get a chance to talk to you all again. I wish we could meet in person, of course, but that's not an option right now, unfortunately. So I have two topics to cover here in the span of the next roughly 35 minutes. And that is to take a look at the newest version of Cognos Analytics 11.1.6 and give you a taste for what's in it. And then to talk to you a little bit about Framework Manager and data modules and how to move between the two of them. If you have Framework Manager models, how to convert from, or if you, FM models, how should you think about data modules? How could you convert a Framework Manager model to a data module, that type of thing. So there's a lot of content to cover. I'm just going to do my best to get through it. I am going to try to be watching the questions in chat. So if there's anything that comes in, I'll try to address it. But given the time constraints, we may have to save them for the end, and then maybe I can answer some of your questions via typing in the chat at some point during today's user group. So with all that out of the way, let me just go ahead and pull open here. So you'll notice I've got Cognos Analytics 11.1.6 open. And right off the bat, you're going to notice a couple changes in this version, like little changes, but they're harbingers of things to come. So the first is going to be the icons have changed. And I know this is something that I hear people sometimes are frustrated with, like the icons change too much, and I don't disagree with you, but I think they're going to be done changing for a while because IBM is moving to a new design standard across all of their technology, all of their software technology, called the Carbon Design Standard, and it's IBM's kind of in-house design language, and it's going to be applied to Cognos Analytics and Planning Analytics and Cloud Pak for Data and SPSS, and really everything, at least the intent is going to come in line with Carbon Design. So what does this mean? Well, it means we have new icons, new fonts, that sort of thing. Both, you can see the icons for team content and my content are new. But if I look at the icons for the actual studios, we don't call them studios anymore, right? But the actual studios, those are new too. There's a couple other things in here that are really great. This new Learn pane. So if you click on the question mark here, you're going to see that this Learn section opens up, and this is new. This kind of replaces the help that they had in the past, and is just vastly better. So this connects directly into the Cognos Knowledge Center and gives you access to things like videos, guides, support documentation. If I want to see this how to create your first dashboard video, I can click on this. And it's actually, this is a YouTube video, but it's going to play directly within Cognos. So that's great. And the other great thing about this is it's context dependent. So depending on what screen you're on, if you're in dashboards and you click the Learn button, it's going to show you stuff related to dashboards. If you're in data modules, it's going to show you stuff related to data modules. And this is really just kind of the first foray into this. I've seen some designs for what they intend to do going forward and things they hope to incorporate into this section. And there's a lot of really great stuff. So I think for those of you who are trying to roll out dashboards to your users or something like that, this is really going to help you a lot. Just give your users really easy access to great content related to the features of Cognos. Now, with that out of the way, let's pop open dashboards and take a look at what's new in there, because there's a lot of changes to dashboards in 11.1.6 compared to earlier releases. So the first thing you're going to notice, aside from, again, the new icons, is that there have been some changes to how we interact with objects within dashboards. For example, let me just go ahead and, well, first I'll add some new data. So this process hasn't really changed. And I'll just grab this CSV out of my content. Now, as you know, you can build visualizations in different ways in Cognos. And one of the ways you can do that is if you say you want a column chart, you can just grab the column chart and drag and drop into the canvas here. And you'll notice that what it's done is different than in previous releases. So in 11.1.5, going all the way back to 11.0, it would open what was called focus mode, wherein this visualization would take up the whole screen. And the visualization options would be embedded within that focus mode. So if you wanted to see the fields and options that existed within any one viz, you'd have to enter focus mode. That's no longer the case. So you see when I have this visualization here, it opens up this section called fields. In the upper right-hand corner, we have fields, filters, and properties. So any visualization I highlight, I can click on fields and I will see the various options for that visualization here. And then it's easy to build my visualization. Maybe I add age range and weekly hours worked or something like that. It'll go ahead and render the visualization. You can see the visualization here. And then if I go ahead and add a second viz to the chart, maybe we'll grab a line chart, for example, and drop that in. Now you'll notice as I click around, the fields section stays on the screen. So whichever visualization I click on, the fields section of the screen updates to reflect the options I have for that viz. So this saves a ton of clicks, and it makes it much easier to understand, to work on your dashboard as a dashboard rather than as individual visualizations. And combined with the fact that they've now pinned the the visualization properties at the top of the screen, much like what you have in report authoring. It's just way easier to interact with objects and dashboards, and there's much less hidden away. My biggest criticism of the releases before this was that a new user would open dashboards and they would just have no idea what they could even do because all of their options were hidden behind context menus. That's no longer the case. Your options are easy to find on the screen, and it's very easy to understand that you click on a visualization, all your visualization options are here, and then if you right-click on anything you see in the visualization, that gives you the options for that individual element. So when you're teaching your users how to use these, it's just much easier to describe to them how to interact with these objects. And that alone is a huge improvement. Now, focus mode itself didn't go away. You'll notice if I go into focus mode, now it's just full screen. They should maybe even rename it to full screen mode. I click on that button, it goes into full screen mode. You'll see as I take away these other elements, I'm still in full screen mode. And when I close full screen mode, it just goes back to showing me how things were. So that is a big improvement just in how these things function. Let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit here because I'm way zoomed in. That alone, like I said, is just a huge improvement in interacting with Cognos Analytics. Let me shrink this gigantic visualization here. And other things that they added to this version that are great, and I'm really going to just kind of blaze through these because I want to cover a lot of stuff for you here. There are a lot of great enhancements in this version. A huge one is going to be the stuff that they've done for crosstabs. So let me add an additional data source here. Wrong button. I'm just going to add our trusty Go Sales that we all know and love. So Go Sales Analysis. When you're using a cube source, the functionality in crosstabs has been greatly enhanced. So let me insert a crosstab. And we're really starting to get into I really think starting to talk about, can we replace PowerPlay or Analysis Studio with dashboards? The answer has traditionally been, if your users are ready to move into a purely visual style of analysis, then yes, but otherwise no. But that's rapidly changing with what they've added in these most recent versions. So let me just build a really simple crosstab for you here, where maybe let's grab time and year, and we'll have that in our columns. And for our rows, we'll just grab, say, retailer type. And we'll look at revenue. So, extremely straightforward crosstab, but a lot of functionality that we now have in here that we didn't have before. So one of them is going to be, you'll notice we have these plus buttons. You zoom in a little and we'll full screen this so you can see them a little better. Right, we have these plus buttons. So by default now, when you're going against cube-based sources, you have expand and collapse in crosstab objects and visualizations. So I look at golf shops, right? I want to see the actual golf shop retailers. I click the plus button, it opens up and shows me the golf shop retailers, right? I want to expand the year 2013. I click the plus button, it expands the year 2013. Now it shows me the quarters. I want to see Q1 of 2013. This is something that people like Paul Mendelson, Cognos Paul, have made a whole career out of writing JavaScript hacks to do this, and we've been asking for it in Cognos. Alan was talking about how he's been doing Cognos for 20 years. Probably expand collapse functionality in like Report Studio was something Alan first asked IBM for in year 1 of those 20 years. Actually, it would have been Cognos at the time, right? And now we're really starting to get it. So this alone, in my mind, is a huge enhancement to how these work. Now, they only work on OLAP sources. They don't work yet, even if you build a data module and you build a navigation path, you still don't have this functionality, which is kind of a bummer, but it's also on the roadmap and I think going to be delivered very soon. A couple other little things in dashboards that are worth highlighting. One was going to be view source. So this has been a major pain point forever, is in dashboards. Let's imagine, this is a great example where we have all of these namespaces, and each namespace has a time dimension, right? So if I see year here, before in 11.1.5 or earlier, you couldn't tell, well, which year column? There are 8 or 10 year columns in this package. Well, now, if you hover over this, you'll see that you get this source pop-up that tells you exactly where this column came from. So it's a small enhancement, but a huge improvement in quality of life. The other thing to show, and maybe for the sake of time, I'll just describe it, is just they've improved unit formatting, wherein you can look at something like, I guess I'll just show it. So if I click here and I want to change the format of something, be a good example. You'll see that weekly hours worked. If I set to say a number, you can now put in, maybe it's got to be a dollar type. Well, whatever. I'll just skip it for the sake of time. You can label things. So if you got something that's like units or pieces or something like that, you can have it say 1 million units, 900,000 units, instead of just the number. So that's a nice quality of life enhancement here too. But the big thing is the redesign on how you interact with these objects. I can tell you from my experience, people can pick this up much easier thanks to this redesign. It was really a good job by Matt Denham and the Dashboards team up in Ottawa. Another big enhancement here, people always ask me, well, what's new in reporting? What's new in reporting? What's new in reporting? So let's take a look at what's new in reporting. The biggest thing that's going to be new in reporting in this version is a new object called the data table. The data table is a new insertable object. So let me just go ahead and grab, once again, our trusty Go Sales. I feel like I know the Great Outdoors company so well at this point. So we'll just grab Go Sales Analysis again. And this time I'm going to insert the data table object. This is a new insertable object type that has a couple of really cool pieces of functionality. So let me go ahead and start building out this table, and I'll really build a very similar thing to what we saw before. So if I were to grab retailer, and let's take, actually let's take retailer type, and then let's nest in the year, and let's go ahead and grab revenue. Simple table, but I think it will nicely demonstrate the pieces of functionality we have here. So the first thing to show is that if we go ahead and look at this, let me just run this report. When you build one of these off of a OLAP source, it is, it has expand collapse. You have to enable it, weirdly enough. So the first thing I want to show you is this is not paginated, right? This object has a scroll bar for the object, not the page, which I love. I love that they've finally done this. This is another thing that traditionally we use JavaScript hacks for, but instead, we now actually have this functionality here. The other thing to show, and I'm already running out of time. We've got such a short amount of time here, so I'll blast through this and we'll start to talk about data modules. The other thing to show is some of the properties you can set here, right? So if you look at this data table, you can set things like like if you look at the data table, you can set things like snap to row, you can group things, summers, headers, expand collapse indicators. You can choose whether things are initially expanded or collapsed, and you can do things like put on on table filters, right? So if you were to turn on grouping, and then you can do automatic grouping, and like, let me show you a good example of that. So if I group this guy, right? Let's group by retailer type. Once I group by retailer type, then you will see that I have the ability when I run this to expand or collapse an individual retailer type. Oh, for some reason it's not working. In any case, it's an option that you have here. For the sake of time, we'll move on. But if you're interested in it, I can show you more of the pieces of functionality that you have here. The final thing I want to get to, and this is a nice data module enhancement. So let me just open one that I already have. Sales analysis module. And the big thing you're going to notice here is going to be that they've made it just way easier to, if you're importing data. So let me go ahead and add a new source. And let's grab, again, Great Outdoors. Yep, Go Sales, select tables. So if I have a table in here, let's say I import order details. In the past, let's imagine I didn't want some of these columns, so I'll just remove a random number of them. Now in the past, if I wanted to update this, my only option, let's say, oh, I want to add in an additional column. My only option was to re-drag the order details object into it, right? The order details table, and it would re-add everything, and then I would have to delete all the stuff I didn't want again. Whereas now I can take a look at this and I can click show unused data items, first of all, so it'll highlight everything that's unused. And if I look in order details, it's highlighted all the unused data items, and then I can grab something like quantity and just drag that one item in. So if you've been building data modules where your data source is changing, you know that this is a huge pain having to deal with this because you had to re-add the whole table at once. That's no longer a concern. You can add just the columns you want from the table into the data module as your source changes. And the other great thing you can do is that you'll see that if you look at the data sources and I look at Go Sales, I can actually reload the metadata from here. And this is really important because in the past, the only way to reload the metadata was to actually give someone access to the manage menu and let them come into data server connections and then navigate to a bunch of different, 4 or 5 screens to find the reload metadata button. Now the reload metadata button is just right here. So as you're modeling, if the DBA calls you and says, oh yeah, those new fields are in the table, you click reload metadata from this screen, and then you drag in just the new fields rather than having to drag in the whole table. So again, gigantic quality of life improvement as far as the modeling experience here. I was just taking a look at the chat and seeing what questions are there. Looks like there's some decent questions. I'll do my best to answer them via chat after the presentation. So now I did want to take some time to talk about converting from Framework Manager to data modules. So let me just pop open my trusty AWS environment here. And I want to show you guys a data module that has so this data module target 1, let's take a look at it. This is like a magic trick I do, right? We can agree this is the data module, it's got stuff in it. I'm going to delete that stuff. I'm going to click the save button. So this is an empty data module, right? There's nothing in it. I'll go ahead and close it. Now let's take a look in here and let's go ahead and open Framework Manager. I want to show you this model, talk you through a little bit of what's in this model, and then we're going to automatically convert it into a data module. Of course, the screen loaded in looking really funky, but that's okay. If we just take a quick look at this model, and I apologize if my text on my screen is really small. I have a high resolution monitor. You can see, so what is in this model? There's two packages, a business view, a database view, a presentation view, right? Package 6A, 6B. Here's the presentation view. The presentation view is made up of shortcuts. The shortcuts point to the business view. The business view has some logic embedded in it. So there's some joins in the business view in this model. There are also some joins in the database view. And there's some mixing in this model of things that you probably should do in the database view, like joins, and things that you should do in the business view. Like, for example, you'll see this retailer location table is actually a composite of these four tables joined together, right? So this is a model query subject that is built off of these database query subjects or data query subjects. So there's embedded calcs, there's embedded SQL. The products table here is made by a SQL statement that you can see here, right? There's embedded filter objects. So this contains not everything you may do in Framework Manager. It doesn't have a DMR in it. There's no parameter map. There's not multiple languages, right? But it contains, in my estimation, 95% of what I see when I work with customers, and it's in a very data module or a data Framework Manager format. So database view, alias shortcuts, and shortcuts, business view, the database view is mostly just select star from the data source like you're supposed to, but it does have some other stuff mixed into it. The business view has some joins, which sometimes you do, but normally I advocate doing in the database view. So it does reflect a lot of the things that I see in the real world, both in terms of, yes, it has many Framework Manager features, but also it has different styles of way of structuring things in Framework Manager that may or may not be the best practice, but I frequently encounter. Now, when it comes time to pull the rabbit out of the hat and explain to you how does this convert into a data module, you'll see that we have developed at PM Square a piece of technology that will convert Framework Manager models to data modules. What this does, just find the right folder here. It has so it's very text-based at this point. We haven't put a UI on it yet, but you can come into here and you say, okay, input sources Framework Manager, output sources data module. The input is a model XML. It's the model that I just showed you, right? The output is a number of different items. So you can say in here, to output to different models, output different packages. You can choose just one package or just the other. In this case, there's just one model I want it to output to. So I want it to output this model, and by leaving this blank, it'll output all, let me close out of that. It'll output all packages, all right? So we're not choosing a specific package. Let me just reopen that to make sure that it looks the way I want it to. Yep, looks the way I want it to. Okay. So now I'm going to basically run a script, right? And it bombed out because of my one part in my config. So let me just edit the config here for you. As you can see, it has error handling built in. Why is it doing that? I wonder if I just put in, so this is something that's under active development. And sometimes when things are under active development, you get unexpected problems. I think it's model 6A. What is the name of this model? Package 6A. Let's just do package 6A. Save this guy. Go ahead and try to run that. Unexpected string. I love, it's this, is my guess. Go ahead and run that guy again. Nope, it's still finding something it doesn't like in there. That's very unusual. This was working just a second ago. Yeah, very weird. Okay, well that's a bummer because I've run this a million times.
Hey Ryan, this is Jason Bennett from IBM. Would clients have the ability to go in and make changes to the code if they, I don't know if it's subscription based or they purchase it from PM Square? How would that work?
Yeah, so the way that we're doing it right now with clients is basically it's like a kind of a software enabled consulting engagement. So we come in and we convert everything for you. We're working on building out a front end, at which point it becomes more of like a piece of software that will sell. And so it does a number of things. You know, when it builds the data module, it collapses it into a data module structure. For example, data modules don't have 3 levels of you know, they don't have a business layer and a database layer and a presentation layer. We kind of are able to trace through all the layers and collapse everything down. I really regret that it's not working because it is so cool, but something is hosed up in here. Anyway, the and so if you're interested in it, you know, you can just reach out to us and we will work with you. Typically, what we do is you give us one of your packages or models, and we'll convert one package to kind of show you how it looks. And then if you want to go ahead and do it with everything, we just set up a consulting engagement, and we're typically in a matter of a week or two able to convert all of your packages or models, sometimes even less. It really depends on how much you have. But stuff that, you know, would maybe take hundreds or sometimes thousands of hours to manually rebuild everything and think about, okay, well, if it looks like this in FM, how's it supposed to look in data modules? We've built all of that intelligence into it. So it not only converts things, but it puts them into best practice data modules instead of just trying to do a one-to-one for whatever was in Framework Manager. So that's something that we do, like I said, as kind of a consulting engagement, and then we'll be rolling out more of a product that you can purchase at some point in the future once it has a UI. Because as you can see, you know, it's a little hairy sometimes. But that was a great question. Thank you.
Hey Ryan, this is Jason. One more question, if you wouldn't mind indulging me.
Yeah.
By virtue of the data module existing, it has to be DQM. Does that mean that this process would convert queries that are CQM over to DQM when they go from a model to a data module?
So essentially, yes. What it really does is it analyzes the Framework Manager specification and then converts that into a data module specification. And so, you know, it is in a way doing that conversion for you, right? Now, what it doesn't do is it doesn't go into your reports and convert your, and like make sure your reports are working against the new CQM objects, right? That's something that you kind of have to, that is a separate exercise. But it does, you will, when you do this conversion, you will be taking what was a CQM model and turning it into a data module that uses DQM. And typically it takes 2 seconds when it's functioning properly, which it isn't for a reason that I am finding utterly baffling.
Ryan?
But yeah, go ahead.
This is Marie. If you want, if there's time at the end, I don't know if you have time to troubleshoot it offline, and maybe you can come back and do a quick demo if there's time at the end.
Yeah, I really just will Slack one of my dev guys and say, hey, what's going on here? And I'm sure they'll be able to tell me in 5 minutes. So
there's even some troubleshooting tips in the questions.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to actually look at them because, I've been too busy doing this stuff. Dashboards can, I see a lot of good questions in here. Oh, I see.
Oh, no, I was just saying there's tips. There's tips on what you can do to troubleshoot the script.
That's very helpful. I appreciate that to everybody who's watching. Yeah, people, it's an interesting thing when you are demoing live and people are trying to tell you how to fix it live. It's almost impossible to read the chat and actually implement the things that people are asking for. It's pretty funny though. Let me give that one more try just to see. But in any case, I can. Are there any other questions that people have? Otherwise, I can wrap up and I'll talk to my dev team and get it fixed. And if there's time, we can show how it works. Yeah, unexpected string. Outputs 10844. Herm. Maybe it does need these. I bet it does. It's probably just me screwing something up. Well, in any case, I'll take a look at it and I'll let you know if we're able to demonstrate it before the end of the user groups day. And then otherwise, I want to thank everybody. I have one more presentation that's coming up. I want to thank everybody for your time today, and apologize that this didn't work. I'll get it ironed out and we'll show you how it works. It's really quite cool, so I'm excited to share it with you. But otherwise, yeah, I'll wrap up here. If you have further questions or you want to see more of what's new in 11.1.6, or you're curious with the data modules, you want to know more about the data module converter, just go ahead and reach out to me. I'll be here today, so even when I'm not presenting, I'll be available in the chat and that sort of thing. So I'm happy to have conversations with people related to these things. There you go, it ran. Of course, I'm out of time. I'll show you what it looks like real quick when it runs, and then if we have time later, I'll talk through with people what it actually did, if that's okay. So I'm going to have to log out and then log back in because the data modules actually get stored in your session in Cognos. So when you run this thing, you actually have to log out and log back in to purge your session. And then we'll see in here data module target 1, and we can all agree here's all this stuff, right? So it was blank before. This is where I pull the rabbit out of the hat, and you can see it has, for example, the table built on SQL, and if you edit the SQL table, here's the SQL, and not only does it bring the SQL over, but it actually converts the SQL. There's different syntax you need to use for data module SQL versus framework manager SQL. So it does that conversion, and it's able to do things like, it's not able to have this automatically open in a way that doesn't look like a mess, but it is able to do things like, you can see this retailer location table is a composite of the tables that you see here, and it's able to figure that out. So it figures out that this retailer location is a composite of these tables, and it builds a custom table. You can see here, this custom table is a composite of those tables. So it really does a lot, is able to do a lot in terms of understanding how framework managers models look and function, and convert that into a data module that's built on data module best practices. So I'll wrap up there because I'm at time. I apologize for the snafus today. A little unexpected, but I guess I figured it out at the end. And if there are other questions or people want to see more about this and we have time later today, happy to show it. Otherwise, very glad to be spending some time with you here today, and appreciate your attendance at today's user group. Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. Before we move over to Jason's presentation on Jupyter Notebook integration, I just want a quick housekeeping thing. A lot of people have been asking some pretty great questions in the questions panel. If you can ask those in the chat panel going forward, it's a lot easier for the organizers and presenters to see those. So again, going forward, if you have questions, please put those in the chat panel instead of the questions panel. Thank you. Jason, you're up whenever you're ready.
Okay, let's see. All right. Let's see, sharing. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. Maria, are you able to see my screen?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, good. All right. My name is Jason Bennett. I've been with IBM for about the last 5.5 years. And for the 25-ish years prior to that, I've been in industry. My background is in finance and economics. I grew up in FP&A. And by virtue of being in a finance group like many other pseudo IT organizations, people have to be able to gather their own data, analyze their own data, report on their own data, and they somewhat learn ways to do this that are sometimes a little out of the norm, and sometimes it requires people to use non-visual or UI type tools like scripting type tools, similar to Python, similar to VBScript, similar to Java. Sometimes you might find in some departments that are heavy data users, whether it's database marketing or actuarial, finance, et cetera, that some people just write their own apps. And that's not terribly uncommon. With that, I believe with Cognos Analytics 11.1.2, we released the ability to run Python code in Jupyter notebooks right inside Cognos Analytics. And what I'm going to do is spend a few minutes today, about the next 22 or so minutes, to show how all of that stuff integrates. So what you'll see is I'll pull data directly from Cognos Analytics into a notebook. I'll write it back to a notebook. I'm going to pull planning information into the notebook, and ultimately I'll use open source machine learning to do what's called some clustering. And then the final thing I'll do is I'm going to take all that data and assumptions, and I'm going to use what's what we call a decision optimization or a mathematical solver. And this came about as a result of a project that we worked on last year. There was a group of us inside our tech sales group within Data and AI, and we worked on a project and we picked a casino as our target subject. Casinos have a lot of different industries under one roof, whether it's hospitality, restaurants, retail, gaming, shows, all of that stuff. And all of those things are under one roof. But what casinos need are not terribly different than what a lot of other businesses and higher ed type organizations need. They either have customers, clients, students, patrons, and they want to offer them world-class experiences based on their previous behavior. Things that they've purchased, things that they've visited, things that they've done. People will come and visit their site. They'll enroll in a particular session at school, and depending on what they've chosen, that experience can be greatly enhanced based on their prior behaviors. So what I'll do is I'm gonna unite all of those things inside a Jupyter notebook. I'll start out with some source data. I'll bring in some assumptions, but ultimately what I want to do is use a solver engine called CPLEX or decision optimization to take all of those assumptions and my objective and use all of those inputs most optimally. And generally speaking, with any kind of optimization process, there are really two things you look at. I want to either maximize or minimize something that's called an objective, but I have to do so in a way that does not exceed the time, treasures, and talents that I have as inputs, whether it's dollars, whether it's time, whether it's resources, it's capital, certain mix, thresholds that can or can't be breached, budgets, things like that. All of those things have to be taken into account when solving for the objective that you're looking to deliver. Okay, so no more slides, we'll get right to it. Now, what you're gonna see is I'm inside Cognos Analytics 11.1.6 in a Jupyter notebook. With the release of R6, we do also now support not just Python code, but also R programming. Now I've got all of these, all of the parts of this demonstration, I'm just gonna copy and paste from a text file that I've got off to the side. It would just take way too long for me to actually type this out, but I'll explain what I'm doing as I go along. And the four pieces that I'm gonna address will be looking at actuals, looking at assumptions from planning. I'm gonna use machine learning methods to get a better understanding of my customers. I'm gonna pull that machine learning output into a Cognos dashboard, and then I'm gonna send all of that back into the solver engine to tell me how I can best use that budget in order to maximize revenue. Okay, let's get started. There are a few things that I need to put to the notebook. There are a couple of open source libraries that I often use, pandas, numpy, matplotlib. All those things are quite popular in terms of doing arithmetic functions, in terms of graphing, things like that. Python is also quite popular and quite strong when doing data transformation and just some general data cleanup. So what I'll do is I'll then bring in data from a data module that is inside my Cognos Analytics environment. And I'm going to call that data set DFTXN, or data frame transaction. And what it's doing is it's using the API that goes right against Cognos that ships with the product. It's getting the data module from a folder called Casino 360, and the table name is dataset_CSV. I can see pretty quickly that event ID, offer ID, those are duplicate columns, and I want to get rid of those. So I'll do a little cleanup. I'll run that cell, and now I can see that event ID and offer ID are not duplicated, and I'm already off to the races in getting this process going. All right, what I want to do is I want to create a chart inside my notebook, and I want to graph the patron attendance at one of our casino sites over time. And what I'm going to need is their age, and I'm also going to need their year of birth. What I've got is their date of birth, but I don't have the year. And I can't really, I don't want to track actual date of birth because that's just too many data points along the x-axis. So what I'll do is I'm going to actually create a field called birth year, and I'm going to pull it from the date of birth field, and I'm going to pull the first 4 characters in that field. I've got date of birth. I'll go over to the right. Here's my birth year, all the way over to the right. I've got the field now that I can create a chart. All right, next thing is to create 2 other data frames, one called A and one called B. That'll be my X and Y axis for the chart that I'm going to create. One is going to be on birth year and age, and I'll average. I'm going to group by the birth year, and I'm going to average the age. And let's see what that data frame looks like. I've got year, the average age. I can also look at what the shape of that is, or I can use Python code to describe what's in there. So I've got some statistics in there too. Quartiles, standard deviation, means the count of all the records, which is pretty helpful. So let's get on with creating the chart. And what I've done here is just use an open source matplotlib library to chart the average patron age over year. And this is pretty helpful because I can see as the decades go on, the average age is less and less. So that informs me of how I might market to some of the clientele or patrons who are visiting my casino. Okay, now I'm going to pull this into a dashboard. I'll grab my notebook object. I'll select the notebook that I'm working on. Access to inside the notebook are any output-based cells. So table we created, table number 2 got rid of the duplicate fields, table 3 created the birth year, and here's the chart. So I'll bring that in, and I'm already off to the races here. Okay, let's go back. And for those of you who aren't familiar with some of the newer features with 11.1, I'll grab, actually, let's go back to, okay. I also want to take the output that I just created that went into that, and I'm going to create a data set that I'm saving back into Cognos Analytics. People forever said, well, you can't write back to Cognos, it's only read-only. Well, we've uncovered or allowed a way now to have a Python-based process using the Cognos API to actually write data back to data sets that are accessible now to dashboards, data modules, reporting, data sets, all that. And I'm creating a CSV called bout.csv. So let's go to our dashboard. I'll add that source. Here it is. And we'll just add a quick line chart here. And I was, when this first came out, I was thrilled because I do have pretty good technical chops, generally speaking. And oftentimes what I like to do is when I do these types of projects, do this type of analysis, I like to stay in one place. I don't want to go from one tool or then go to this tool and try to combine it together. Ultimately ending up in Excel where I do a bunch of VLOOKUPs, hoping things don't get disconnected, which of course is never the case. So now I'm also tracking by year patrons. But instead of it coming from a data frame directly from the notebook, it's coming from a data set that I exported back into Cognos Analytics. And let's just take a look at what the forecast periods might be like. And for those who are familiar, we introduced forecasting that uses a number of different smoothing methods that are available to me in dashboards. Okay, we brought data in, we did some cleanup, we did some analysis on it, we sent it back to Cognos, and we started a dashboard. We're going to move to part 2 of this exercise. Now I want to get an idea of what my buying habits or patterns are among the patrons who are visiting my properties. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a number of methods from an open source predictive library called MLX10. Love it. It's got all the things I need. And for those of you who do or are familiar with data science, there are certain things when doing deep analytical work using data science methods that you can do, whether it's feature engineering. But what we're going to be doing today in this example is I'm going to create something called features. And features are the things that from my data set that I actually want to do analysis on. I may have a data set that's got 150 columns in it and 10 million rows, but I just don't need all of that. I only want to do analysis on a few of the things. From the data set that I brought in from Cognos Analytics, the features that I'm going to be looking at are city, customer type, date of birth, gender, loyalty level, etc. So let's bring those in, have a look at what that looks like. What I'm also doing is I'm applying a process for each customer ID to take product 1, product 2, product 3, product 4. And although in generic format, I'm assigning a 0 or 1 that represents whether or not that customer bought that product. So I can see for customer 1000, they bought product 1, 2, and 3, but not 4 and 5. And for customer 1003, they bought 1, 2, 4, and 5. And that's going to be important in a minute, and I'll show you why. As I look to understand, some of the characteristics of the buying habits of my customers, and it doesn't have to be customers, it can be people who have chosen classes, it can be people who have chosen certain treatment methods when they get ill, it can be people who are online shopping, people who are going out to dinner, really anything that's customer centric. What I need to do is the minimum support or the minimum strength of the predictive element of what I'm using against my customer base has to be at least 10%, because I don't want it to be too narrow. I don't want it to be too wide. I'm also going to apply some rules. This process is actually one of my favorites. And here's why. In the leftmost column, I have my customer ID. The antecedents are the things that came before the actual result or the consequence. So for example, product 1 for this particular customer had an antecedent or a purchase of product 3, 5, 4, and 2. However, for customer 58, they also bought product 1, but only bought product 2 and 5. And it also gives me the strength of that prediction, meaning they bought product 1, they also bought 2 and 5, but the strength is only about 29%, not terribly high. However, for the first record, which starts with 0 instead of 1, product 1 was purchased and product 2 was, but the strength of that and the quality of that is much higher. Those are the things I want to keep in mind. Okay, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create another data frame that does some further analysis on this data set. And what we're doing here now by ID, I'm taking the confidence column that is up here in the antecedent and consequent table, taking the confidence values, and I'm going to be bringing that in by customer ID for all of the products. But you can see that I've got a confidence level of 0.4, but that person only bought product 1, and I've got really zeros for the rest. They also bought product 2, and I need a way to group this or shrink it down so that I don't have a lot of zero or a lot of zero values for the columns before this grouping process. So I'll take care of that. I'm also going to rename some of the columns that are friendlier to me as I'm doing the analysis. I might not be terribly familiar with what prod 1 is or what prod 4 is, but when I give them friendly names, then it's much more meaningful to me as I'm doing the analysis. I've also grouped this data together in a way where I've got now the confidence value is now transposed under each one of the products instead of having its own column. So I've grouped it, shrank it down, and now it's something that's much more usable. I think I want to bring a column in called state. And these are my offers. So now I'm starting to get a much better idea of what bought, why they bought it, the strength of the relationship between what they bought and what came before it. And let's send that out to Cognos Analytics again to add to our dashboard. This data set is called offers output. So let's go back to our dashboard. I sent it to the same folder, offers output. We'll add a map. State will be my location, and let's just grab clothing. Let's see what people are buying. Okay, I didn't have really any kind of insider access to this prior to using some of what I thought were pretty simple methods to generate these results. But now I can see where people live based on what they've purchased from our casino properties. I've got a trend of their age. I've got a view of what they've purchased, where they live. This is not the purchase location. This is where they actually live. So I'm getting some good intelligence on demographics. Okay, that's the second section of this. Section 3 is I'm going to be pulling in information assumptions from Planning Analytics. Again, using an open source library called TM1Py. Like with any planning analytics environment, I need to log into that environment. And I'm holding that login information in an Excel file that I've got stored in Cognos. And the login ID and password, along with some of the other parameters that I'm going to need to pass into the TM1Py methods, I'm storing inside that Excel file. And the way that Python stores it is index 0 is the first row. It always starts at 0. So it's row and column. So this is row 1, column 1, row 1, column 2, row 1, column 3, etc. So now I've instantiated those, the ID, the password, and some of the other parameters that I'm going to need. This is going out to a planning analytics cube that's cloud on IBM Cloud. And you can see that marketing spend Midwest is 151,000. And let's just change this. So I'm logged into my planning analytics environment that's on IBM Cloud. I'll just change this to 143,706. Let's say, for example, I gotta refresh. 143,706. And let's run this cube that says with this TM1 service that's a part of my TM1Py method. Here's the base URL, the user ID that's coming from parameters that I passed in. Here's the password, the namespace. We always use SSL for IBM Cloud, stay safe. And the data has the cube name and the view name that I've got specified also here as parameters. I've got a cube name, marketing cube name for marketing, P for product, and then 2 views. So the last time I ran this particular cell, I had 151,000, and we changed it just a minute ago to 143,706. Let's just make sure that's working. 143,706. Okay, good. So it's retrieving the data right from the cube. Now let's get some other assumptions. And get the available budget. Okay. There we go. Here's my budget. But I want to change that budget to something that is probably more reasonable based on what I know we're going to actually be able to spend. Because casinos, while I think they print money, they actually don't. It's the budget, 77,010. And I need a singular value here. Bring this in. Okay, so here are my product assumptions. Okay, I know I'm going through this very, very quickly, but remember that uniting all of these processes within Cognos Analytics is incredibly powerful, but it's really important because having a lot of disparate systems is not going to allow for a high level of unity. It creates a lot of different data silos. It forces people to have a lot of different skill sets that a lot of times don't mix and match. So I'll pause here. I'm at about time. I've got till about 2:10, but I do want to go through the final process. And what I'll do is I'll just bump ahead to what actually occurs when the solving process happens. I've got about 7 or 8 more cells to fill in here and run, but I'll just get to the end. This is the results cell that comes from the decision optimization process that runs on IBM Cloud. And the last time I ran this, I had a budget of 87,011. And it's going to give me all of the metrics that I'm looking for: sales, the number of offers for all the channels, sales for the products that I have. But most importantly, what I noticed when I ran this process last time, the available budget that I have was $87,011. The budget spent was only about 67,000, which means that every dollar over 668 was really diminishing returns, and adding more money to a campaign isn't going to get me more revenue, or it's not going to be optimized. It's also telling me something very important, and that is, where's the revenue number? Expected revenue. So I ran this process. The marketing campaign is not kicked off yet. What the solver engine is telling me is that it's only going to use 66 or 67 of the 87,000 in budget that I have, but the return I'm going to get is far less. It's half. I'm only going to get about 34,000 in revenue. So before I kick this campaign off, whether it's to attract employees, to retain employees, whether it's to attract customers, to get them to buy, to get them to shop, upsell, cross-sell, I can see now that what this solver engine is telling me is this is not a very good campaign. What I need to do is do some sensitivity analysis, maybe on some of the assumptions, looking at the product value, looking at the product costs, the various lift parameters that I've got for each of the inputs. And I may need to refine things a bit so that I get better use of the budget dollars that I want to spend for this campaign. It also may lead me to a conclusion that this campaign is just not going to be profitable and we should allocate those dollars somewhere else. Okay, that concludes my part of the demonstration uniting Cognos Analytics, Jupyter Notebooks with planning, open source ML, and decision optimization. I really appreciate everyone hanging in there. I know this was a lot to throw at you. I went pretty quickly in the short amount of time that I had. But Joel, I'll break and I'll pause.
Thank you, Jason. The next presentation is Brian Moore is from PM Square, is going to be doing Planning Analytics Primer. And it's our last session before a short break.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Brian.
All right, wonderful. Let me switch the screen that I'm presenting here. And all right, do we have the title slide?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, well, thank you for having me, everybody. And I'll lose my slide already. Sorry. Sorry, folks. Technical issue here.
Hey, Joel, while we
Okay, are
wait.
we back?
Oh, yep.
Okay, sorry about that. It's not doing presenter view. Okay, we should be okay. Let's see here. Thank you for having me to the Midwest IBM Analytics user group. My name is Brian Moore. I will be presenting to you Planning Analytics. So there I am, pre-COVID, back in the haircut days.
Brian?
Got it.
Brian, we don't see, well, I don't see your screen.
Yeah, I don't either.
Neither do I.
Okay.
Joel, do you have a copy of his slides? Oh, there you are.
There we go.
There we go. Now we got to recycle the joke. There I am, pre-COVID days with a haircut. I am PM Squared's Planning Analytics practice lead and been with the company about 6 months now. I've been doing planning and forecasting kind of tools throughout my career, over 15 years, spanning a variety of different tools, mainly with IBM and Cognos. I've served in all roles with project management, system architecture, and the in-the-weeds development, and have certifications in the various disciplines of planning analytics. And yeah, as we get into it, we're going to be stepping back a little bit from the technical nature of Jason's presentation, but really enjoyed that, and I'll try to loop that into some of the slides here and how that ties into some of those concepts. So we're going to start things off here with a planning analytics summary. Going to kind of stay basic in that regard. So I know there's an amount of the audience that does know planning analytics, but we're just going to be kind of covering high level. Hopefully in the demo though, you'll pick up some nuggets there. I hope I don't bore you too much. So try to incorporate everybody here. And second topic we'll cover is the business analytics maturity model. So as we go through kind of the evolution and the roadmap of analytics throughout your organization, from real-time and BI, data analytics on through the predictive and leveraging AI for your advanced analytics. We'll do a comparison of PA versus CA. We'll get into a live demo. I'll tell you about a free trial that IBM's doing. And lastly, we'll try to save some time for a Q&A. All right, planning analytics basics for those not too familiar. We have planning analytics has been around about as long as Cognos BI, formerly called TM1. In fact, now it's planning analytics powered by TM1 technology. So feel free to use TM1 and planning analytics synonymously as terms. When planning analytics came along, it did introduce these two new interfaces on the right side here. That's about 3 years ago. And you'll notice the top, it's called Workspace. It's very similar to Cognos Analytics dashboards in the design of that interface. So you'll see a lot of similarities there. And so for specifics, as far as planning analytics goes, it's a proprietary in-memory database and aggregation platform. And so what we're doing is bringing data into TM1 cubes. So it differs from CA in that regard, in that you're not referencing live data sets or using a data warehouse to reference your data sets. You're actually doing the ETL and bringing the data into TM1 cubes. And you can refresh that and synchronize that on a monthly, weekly, or even hourly schedule, depending on the data set size. So you can get close to real time, but it is actually saved separately. So it's important to note there. It's in memory, meaning it stores all that data in RAM and makes it very accessible when you're querying a cube, as opposed to running a relational database query. So because of its in-memory nature, it's very responsive, very quick for the end user. It's a consolidation engine that can serve as your source of record for a global consolidation. Large companies across the globe might need to incorporate several different data sources. They might have run SAP for some of the books and then acquire a company that runs Oracle, where they're able to merge those data sets in planning analytics in a matter of weeks by just doing a mapping exercise, when it might take 12 to 18 months to actually merge those two ERPs together. Also, if you have companies reporting in local currency, different currencies around the globe, you can use planning analytics to merge that from a reporting standpoint, and also perform allocations and intercompany eliminations for your global consolidation. So all those are kind of reporting-based features. as we get into planning, serves as a single source of the truth for integrated reporting and planning. And so everybody's firing out of the same playbook. When you log in, you're all looking at data stored in TM1 data cubes. Nobody's running off of Excel versions and offline copies and version 17, version 26, and having to worry about merging those varying copies together. So single source of the truth, everybody is using a central data repository for the planning process. Multidimensional data modeling and sparsity. You can build multidimensional cubes anywhere from 2 dimensions on up to 250. The biggest I've seen is 25. So it just kind of gives you limitless abilities to analyze and slice and dice your data instead of just having accounts and months and years. You can add in products dimension and customers dimension and regions dimension and cost centers and on. So it really doesn't limit your design of the model, because you do have that flexibility to make it very large and cover a vast number of dimensions. And then sparsity, that's a concept where in the olden days we used to have to, when we're doing a multidimensional cube, the size of the cube consisted of multiplying all the elements together to get up to a number in the billions. So you have 100 accounts and 12 time periods and 100 departments. Well, very quickly you get into the millions and billions of cells, and all of that would count against you. But with sparsity in planning analytics, only the populated data, only the populated cells count for processing power. So you could have a 10 billion cell cube, but if only 100,000 of those intersections or cells are populated, then it's still going to process very efficiently, very quickly. So that's one of probably the most important differentiator for TM1 against other tools in the market. We have attribute-based hierarchies, which I'm actually doing a live stream on next week around the same time. And if you'd like to know more about that, that's kind of the ability to take like a products dimension and then build a different set of roll-ups based on different criteria. So for products, you might want to group them by segments or logically as to how they'd roll up, or you might group them by brand or by color or by size or by price point. So it gives you unlimited flexibility in the different ways you can aggregate those attributes together. And then lastly, the 2 interfaces we spoke to a second ago. Workspace is sometimes referred to as PAW. That's the upper right interface you see there. And then on the lower right, you see Planning Analytics for Excel. So that's a live tie-in to the TM1 data cubes in an Excel interface that makes a lot of folks comfortable. All right. And use cases. Here's a slide to tell you all the different ways people are using planning analytics. So we see varying parts of your organization that can take advantage of PA. So it can cover the entire organization, and it's meant to really stratify your planning process and increase accuracy. There's a time when planning was just done in the Office of Finance, where folks that would have little knowledge of the projects or the sales process or the manufacturing data involved, and they'd be drawing up the plans based on historical data, and accuracy would be poor. Now we're able to use planning analytics to push the details of that planning process down to those individual parts of the business. Let's take an example of HR planning. There in the upper left, we can go employee-based or position-based to get down to the specific employee of what their pay structure, benefits, commissions, terminations, and bonuses might be incorporated into their pay scale. So you can get down to the dollar on exact specifics of HR data, which generally makes up one of the biggest expenses in your company. Sales expenses can get very granular down to the store level or sales rep level, or you can drive your sales planning based off of historical data, unit forecasts, or even external factors as we get into AI. So just looking at maybe weather data or market impacts like global events like COVID is having in affecting what your sales numbers are going to look like, you can quickly incorporate that into your sales planning process. One more item in the lower left there, we have marketing data. Maybe we want to, or maybe we discover that there's correlations, like Jason was pointing out in his presentation, that there's correlations between marketing spend and the actual ROI. So by incorporating that into our planning process, we can determine dollar for dollar what our marketing budgeted expenses is going to yield in terms of ROI. All right, now we're going to go ahead and go into a poll. So based on what we've told you about planning analytics, we're going to send you out a poll and see what kind of customers you think planning analytics has. So Joel, you want to launch that poll? All right, so do we think this is generally a tool for like an Amazon or a Boeing, so a huge organization, or could a small company like American Public Radio benefit from planning analytics? Give me a couple more seconds. All right, Joel, let's roll out the results. Okay, it looks like a lot of folks went with the bigs, Amazon and Nike. That's a good guess, and Boeing as well, so mainly large companies. And the correct answer would be a trick question, that all of these are customers of planning analytics. So I want to illustrate the point that not only is it running some of the biggest corporations in the world, but also, we have companies with 10 million, 50 million in annual revenue that might utilize planning analytics as well to kind of take that next step off of Excel and more primitive tools. So it's a very flexible tool covering a lot of different use cases, but can benefit companies of just about any size. Thanks, Joel. Here's the business analytics maturity model, and we can kind of cover some of the stuff that Jason covered in his presentation. Is more at the end of the ladder here on the far right. But quickly running through left to right here, we have the basics, of course, minimum competitive advantage, and then each step you take yields more competitive advantage as you work your way up the ladder. Typically, customers move down this roadmap in their evolution. Some start in the middle and go backwards, but generally you have to have the first 4 or 5 kind of nailed before you can get into predictive and prescriptive. So standard reports, what happened and why, Excel-based reporting, just the monthly reporting book, just kind of getting that task done, not really getting much advantage out of it, but kind of just a requirement of business is to know what happened. Next, we move into ad hoc and report visualizations. Tells us, kind of adds to it some business intelligence. Maybe we have flexibility and capability to slice and dice. Maybe we mix in some VLOOKUPs to help us do better analysis, and we start to incorporate charts and graphs and kind of let our data tell a story. And then comes drilling down and querying, so building in hierarchies. So we have subtotals and grand totals at different levels. So whether that be the product level or the sales level, you can kind of get a better grasp at various different subtotals of the organization and incorporate larger data volumes. Then in the middle, we're at planning and forecasting. Starting with kind of the annual budget is what's most common is the first step. What's the current state? What are future plans? Pushing out that planning process to the organization to collaborate and have multiple different folks involved in that planning process, and being able to quickly aggregate those plans together. So not spending weekends cobbling a pile of Excel sheets, but having a more incorporated tool to do so. And eventually, when you get more efficient at it, you can get down to a quarterly forecast and maybe even a monthly forecast or continuous forecasting, where when you have a tool like Planning Analytics, you can easily jump in and incorporate changes as they happen. Some of our customers, as a result of the pandemic, are experiencing enormous benefits, being able to reforecast each week based on the different governmental announcements that affect the market. So just being able to jump in and totally reshoot your numbers and have that roll up to the top of the organization is a huge benefit in times like these. Next, we have automated alerts. So that incorporates baking in feedback mechanisms into your planning and reporting, so you can get email alerts in terms of when certain budget thresholds have gone over, and you can respond and react and reallocate as necessary. And we have, as we get into the advanced analytics realm, we have statistical analysis. I think that was some of what Jason was presenting there, and that's incorporating statistics to analyze data correlations, analyze your trends and seasonality and possible causal factors as to what's affecting your numbers. You can use your statistics to then produce predictive analytics, and that's using those stats to then have a predictive forecast and not be subject to human bias. A lot of forecast processes out there start with last year's numbers, maybe bake in a 3 to 5% increase, and then comes the fudging of maybe a planner saying, well, I think this is logical to happen. Not statistics based at all. So going off that gut feeling tends to lead to the most amount of inaccuracy, and having a statistics based process can get you away from that. So that's why customers are seeing the value of predictive analytics. And then lastly, prescriptive analysis, and that's taking full advantage of what you think your prediction is going to be. So it's kind of formulating the action plan of where to allocate your resources to get the best results. Now, we should note that planning analytics covers the full spectrum on up to prescriptive. We don't cover that at this point, but we are starting to incorporate predictive analysis, which is due out later this year, baked right into the tool. So similar to what you're seeing in Cognos Analytics with Watson baked into the technology, Planning Analytics will also have that as well. All right. Next, we're going to go to the comparison. I'll pull out my pointer here. I know it's a lot to go over, but just kind of some granular details as to what the benefits are in each and where you might choose one tool over the other. But as you can see, a lot of cross coverage here. With the Cognos Analytics, selects out optimal data visualizations, picture perfect or pixel perfect reporting, JavaScripting and CSS. So those are kind of specific to CA. Of course, down at the bottom, we have write back in Planning Analytics. So if it's going to be a planning requirement, straight off, you're going to want to look to PA because Cognos Analytics doesn't have the write back. And those attribute-driven hierarchies are becoming a huge feature as well. They're very unique. So being able to roll up your data in several different ways by several different criteria to really get that slice and dice. Lastly, we have commentary. So in the planning process, users are able to comment at the cellular level, workbook level, region, store level, just about any level to actively collaborate within the planning process. All right, that gets us to the demo. We are running a little low on time, so gotta check in with my organizers, see what we're looking at time-wise. Should I cut into the break a little bit?
So I think, yeah, for those that are wanting to see the live demo, stay on. We'll go into break a little bit. If you don't want to, obviously you can go take your break early. And then we will still come back around 2:35. So whether you stick on or take your break now, just plan on coming back around 2:35 if you're interested in the next session.
250.
Sorry, yeah, 250.
250.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, so I'll do the 5-minute demo version here. I'll try to wrap by 2:40 to give people a little bit of a break. So apologies for going over with that technical glitch at the beginning, but jumping in quick here, this is Planning Analytics Workspace, or PAW, and this is all custom designed. So it is your own workbook, really. You're not kind of shoehorned into a specific template. You can design however you see fit. If you just wanted to show cubes and visualizations, you can have that as your landing page. Here, I kind of designed kind of from a PowerPoint style of putting in a workflow and just showing the user kind of a visual representation of the planning process. So if I'm a user, I might come in here to my SmartCo, fictitious company, and go into a dashboard to first review what kind of results we're currently having. So here I am in 2019. I have 4 little dashboards here to quickly tell me some of my big expense items, breakdown of my payroll, maybe a gross margin analysis by month, see if I'm trending in the right direction there, and then some depreciation schedules to kind of tell me where I'm at with CapEx. I have a link built in here that'll get me back to the main menu. So I can click back to there once I've had a chance to review what the current situation is. Right in the middle of the page here, we want to demonstrate the GL load. So I'm going to sync my actuals numbers from a variety of different data sources. Here I've put in Oracle, Workday, and Excel, kind of show you the different, the flexibility of the tool, and that we can adapt to just about any data source as long as ODBC compliant. If I click the Oracle icon, I can see a quick little spin there, kind of representing that it's refreshing from that data source and running the ETL to sync in those actuals. Same thing with Workday. Click it and a quick refresh. And also, if I have an entity of the organization that is not in a main database system and just has flat files for their data, they can go ahead and hand me a CSV file. I can incorporate their data as well. Quick click into the GL cube to review those results. Make sure I don't see any crazy anomalies here, and that net income kind of came in consistent with previous months, so that I don't see any outliers off the bat. And then now I'm ready to plan. So I've reviewed current month actuals. Maybe now I want to plan out the next quarter or the next year. And so we're going to load in our financial summary. We're going to load actuals data, and then we're also going to incorporate budgets for OpEx, workforce planning, and CapEx. I'll just highlight OpEx here, and we'll kind of skip to the end. So I go into OpEx. I see OpEx detail, and it has my main P&L accounts displayed out here on the left. If I go ahead and expand payroll, I see that green means that some of that data is being linked. So I have greater levels of detail around my payroll planning because I have a specific module to plan out my specific by the employee related expenses, salaries, benefits, and what have you. If I tuck that back away, let's go to more of a higher level expense like office expense. And so there I can make direct inputs. What we see up here as far as an organization entity I've chosen is Massachusetts. I can easily go up the chain to total company or Eastern region, shoot around different parts of the country. So let's stick with Massachusetts for now. And I can see my 2019 budget, and I want to go ahead and populate the 2020 budget. When I flip to 2020, I can go to the office expenses for the total year and run a quick spread. And we'll do a relative proportional spread to 2019. And it says, for 2019 budget, we had 99,000. What do you want the value to be? So let's say a starting point is 120,000. And what it does there is it populates 2020, broken back across the profile, the spread profile, exactly of what 2019 was. So very cool in that, it realizes all those different patterns and does the break back, is what we call it, in pushing all that data back to those specific intersections. Now, as I get into my 2020 plan, for insurance, I'm going to have to pay that all year. I know that. I'm going to hold those cells. And then I know that January to March was kind of normal, but then everything went haywire. So starting in April, I have floating expense planning for office expense, equipment, supplies, postage, all that. Let's go ahead and crank that way down. So if I go to the top node of office expense, I'm going to throttle it in half and say 60K instead of 120K. And therefore, I can quickly slice my office expenses in half for the rest of the year due to COVID. So that's, as speedy examples I could give is to having the flexibility and agility to get into the specifics of the organization quickly and changing up the forecast or budget data and see how that ripples all the way to the total company at the top of the house, so that you can incorporate changes all across the business into a aggregated and integrated reporting system. couple more slides here. Free trial. So let's make sure and click on the IBM.com products planning analytics. I don't know if I'm distributing these slides, but if we go on over to that link, you'll hear all about 90-day free trial. We want to get this product in your hands. We want you using it. PM Square is happy to provide any workshops, tutorials, or help initially get you set up and answer any questions you might have. So 90 days, IBM's going to provision a cloud environment for you to try out. And it's a pretty great deal. You get a whole quarter usage of the tool for free. If you should want to then convert that trial instance into a full application and keep using it on demand, you have that column on the right where you're able to convert that for very, very low amount per user basis. So it's a very flexible, very lightweight instance of planning analytics. But if you do see the value in the tool, eventually you could graduate and use it like the Nikes and Amazons are taking advantage of it. All right, and that gets us to Q&A. Anything from the organizers?
Nope, I'll just add if you do have questions. I think we've confirmed there is no chat availability for the attendees. So if you have questions, just post them in the questions panel and we'll try to answer those as we can. And break, again, we'll come back at 2:50. Ryan Dolly from PM Square will help us kind of map out the Cognos Analytics Continuum. So we'll put a quick timer up just so you can see where we're at, but we'll get back going at 2:50. Thanks,
All right,
Brian.
very good. And I got a couple more slides here. Please go ahead and connect me on LinkedIn. Email me if you have any questions about planning analytics or want to get set up with that free trial. Love to help you out there. And again, live stream next week. I'm doing my first YouTube live stream. You can check out that on pmsquare.com events to see more details about planning analytics. If you are a PA user, I'd highly recommend checking that out because we're going to go through the new changes in PAW version 52, and we're going to do a deep dive into those attribute-driven hierarchies. So love to have you join next week on YouTube, and hopefully I don't fall on my face on the live stream format presentation, but you'll have a lot better opportunity to ask questions and give your feedback.
No,
Thanks again, everybody.
You did great, thank you. And PM Square folks, I think it would have been fun to do another potential, maybe giveaway in the future. If in your previous slide where you had kind of cartoon of all of the people that work for PM Square, I guessed 2. It would be great to see how many people can guess, how many of them. So that would be a fun thing to do next time.
Yeah, I'm still trying to go for 100 myself. I'm at about 90%.
Nice. And for those of you who love listening to celebrities, Brian, your voice is exactly like John Krasinski.
Well, thank you. I'm enjoying his new series with some good news. So
yeah,
take care, everybody. Appreciate the time.
Thanks.
So there's a question about, well, I'd like to see more of the data table. So I'll take 2 minutes and just show you like the features of the data table. They're all controlled in the properties. By default, everything's turned off. So it's weird. You make the data table, it just looks like a table. But then when you come in here and you do things like you turn on different properties that you have in here, then suddenly it gets really cool. So if I just run this and show you all the stuff that's in the data table, you'll see that, so it comes back and here I have all these totals and they're all expandable, right? And I can do things like in any given column, I can say, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm only looking at Americas and Asia Pac, right? And you notice it's not requerying. It doesn't have to go fetch data from the database again. It doesn't have to do anything like that. And these are, it's smart, so it's just a list when you only have a few items, but when you have many items, it becomes a search prompt kind of, where you can expand, and kind of do this type of analysis. So this is something we've been doing custom JS for forever. There's also, you can do custom indicators like, thumbs up, thumbs down type of things. or green or red dots. You have lots of options for how to do things in here. But the main thing about these to understand is they're totally live and interactive in a way that Cognos normally is not, and is normally perceived as a knock on Cognos when you compare it to like Power BI. People expect to be able to expand and collapse and expect to be able to filter on column headers and do searches and that sort of stuff. And this gives you that capability in the data table. I would also take this as a sign of things to come. That IBM, the direction for report authoring will be to flesh this object out and to give you more objects like this that are fully interactive without requerying the database. I have not seen hardly any specifics about that, but I think that this is the direction they're going to be heading. So I did want to share that a little bit in response to the question of, well, what, please show more of the data table. So the presentation I'm giving is all about the Cognos Continuum. So we're going to talk about where Cognos has been and where it's going a little bit, but more than that, we're going to talk about where BI has been and where your BI practice maybe has been and where things are going, and how to get Cognos, make it so that Cognos is delivering for you and your organization in a super modern way. So that's the topic of today's conversation. Now, I'll do my best to monitor the questions. It's really quite challenging in GoToWebinar, I find, to do that. So if questions are coming in, I'll do my best to look at them, but I'll try to answer them after the fact if I'm not able to answer them live. So here's our standard disclaimer statement of, there may be forward-looking statements about products and roadmaps and that sort of thing. I'm going to tell you right now, there's really not a whole lot of that in here, but we throw it up anyway when we may be having a conversation about where things are headed. And the other thing to keep in mind is, though I am very knowledgeable about the roadmap, is I am not IBM. I am with PM Square, and so when I share roadmap information with you, you do need to keep that in mind. That it's not like I'm one of the guys in Ottawa, right? So with that grain of salt, let's take a look at what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to just do a little bit of talk about BI through the years, why what we're talking about matters. We'll talk about kind of the 3 stages of Cognos on what we would call the Cognos Continuum. And then we'll talk about how to get there, right? If you want to get to the peak optimal Cognos performance, both in terms of the software itself, but also in terms of your BI practice, what is PM Square's route to that, and how can we help you along the way? So the first thing to talk about is just, what was BI like in 2010? So this is roughly when I got into it. In fact, I have some colleagues I know who are attending today from my first Cognos job. So hi to everybody at Alliant in Madison, Wisconsin. But what were things like back when I started? Well, the idea was there'd be a single enterprise BI tool for everybody, that it would be controlled by IT, so very strong governance from the IT team, that all content would be created by professionals who knew what they were doing. And in reality, self-service was a thing we talked about, but what that really meant in 2010 was, I go to Cognos or Bob J or Crystal or whatever it is, and I run the report that the professional developers built, and I export it to Excel, and I do my Excel thing, right? And like, was Power Pivot even a thing in 2010? I'm not sure it was. Certainly there was no Power BI in 2010. Power BI didn't come around until 2015. So this was the world we lived in, and it had a lot of advantages. And we still do a lot of this stuff today. So it's not going to be one of those presentations where I'm telling you like, oh yeah, ditch this way of doing things, right? It's still super valuable and an important part of your BI toolkit. But the real question in this world that we asked was, are they, meaning users, using the reports we built? That was what it was all about back then. We're on the BI team, we're building reports. It's going to take us a long time. We got a big backlog of requests. And then when those reports roll out, the key question was, are they using the reports or not? That was kind of what we were judged on. That was our success metric. Did we as a BI team deliver reports that people actually use? Now, what are things like in 2020? It's not really focused on individual reports anymore, right? We're talking, we've reached a point where we're starting to think about our enterprise analytics environment as if it's a product. And that's really what I'm going to advocate over the course of this presentation. The question is, have we built a platform that contains the right data for the right users who have the right skills with the right access to the right features at the right time? It's a much more complicated question than just, hey, are people logging in and viewing the reports we built, right? That's a component of it. But what you need to provide in 2020 from an enterprise analytics platform is much more comprehensive. And it's not about just about governance like it was in 2010. Governance and security were the name of the game, and they're still critical components. But the assumptions we made in 2010, like we lock all features and all data unless and until someone proves they need the feature or proves they need the data. That type of thinking has evolved really rapidly to where we may put that type of controls on certain types of data, certain data sources, or certain users, but there are other user communities that we can serve with a tool like Cognos, that if we're operating like it's 2010, where all we're thinking about is the reports and our people using them, we're going to find that we can't reach those communities. And that's what it's all about. So the question today is our analytics platform meeting the needs of our user communities? And that's pluralized for a reason. I was an English major, so I pay really close attention to stuff like that. But the reason it's communities and not community, because it's a mistake to think about the people who access Cognos or could access Cognos as a single community. You have multiple constituencies within your company that could be served by your enterprise analytics tool, excuse me. And so you need to think of it that way, not a single community, but multiple communities. There may be a lot of overlap, but you have different audiences, and you need to treat it that way. Now, why did we want to talk to you about this today, and why does it matter? Well, the reality is that if Cognos doesn't offer a modern experience, someone else will. And a lot of you have probably seen this in your organizations. I've seen it in my customer base. If people can't use the things like what you see on the screen right, dashboards and the new exploration feature, if these aren't allowed to use them, or they've had a bad experience with them, then what they're going to do is they're going to choose to turn to these types of things instead. Now, some of these, I'm not going to tell you today. I know this is an IBM Analytics user group, and I'm not going to tell you today that it's a catastrophe if your users start using Power BI. In fact, it's almost, Power BI is like a virus in a way, where it's almost impossible to control its spread in your organization, because Microsoft gives it out for like a nickel, right? So you need to learn to recognize what Power BI is good at, and what Cognos is good at, and really, in order to make Cognos as healthy as possible, make sure that you're using Cognos to its fullest extent at the things it's best at. And for your Power BI users, try to develop inroads to show them why they might want to turn to something like Cognos. But certainly don't view it as a failure if they start using Power BI, but also understand the reasons why they did that, and ask yourself, were there things I could have done for these people that would have prevented them from wanting to turn to a Power BI or a Click or a Tableau? And if so, how can I start to offer those things within Cognos? So let's talk about the Cognos Continuum. It's three stages to Cognos enlightenment. Now you may say, English major Ryan, does a continuum really have stages? And the answer is no, right? So each one of these items is its own continuum, and you could be at different points. You can, for us Cube fans, you can think of these as dimensions. You could be at a different point in each of these dimensions, right? But I wanted to set the stage for what they are before we talk about what the three levels are. So your BI team focus, that's the thing that all the BI work revolves around. This is, what do we think about day in and day out? What is the unit of work that we concern ourselves with. Our philosophy is that we produce great blank, or we service blank, right? That's your team focus. The toolkit are the software platforms or features that are in use. So in the case of Cognos, your toolkit is it's dashboards, it's report authoring, it's framework manager, it's transformer, it's the new Explorer interface, it's everything, right? Self-service, of course, we all understand what it is, but it's what can users do on their own without having to pick up the phone and ask IT to do it. From the workflow perspective, we're asking who generates ideas and then who does the work to deliver those ideas. It's different at different stages and in different customers of mine. As far as data sources, we're not talking about the Cognos data source object that you have in Cognos 10 and 11, but rather we're asking what types of data exist in the environment? What is being pulled into Cognos? Is it just our ERP? Is it just our EDW? Or are there other data sources that we can rope in? For design principles, it's how is the data presented? Is everything list reports or crosstabs? Is it prompted reports? Are there visuals or not? Are they interactive or not? Your design principles guide how is the data presented to your end users. And finally, your delivery philosophy is how is content delivered? Now, this is both like, do we burst reports or do we make them log in? But it's more than that. It's about how do we deliver as a BI team, right? So do we use waterfall? Do we use agile? What is our process for taking requests and servicing those requests? I did a great project with Alliant Energy about just that for their BI team that was really successful, and they presented at our Bacon conference. So if you go to youtube.com/PM Square, you can look that up and see Heather and I from Alliant presenting about how we did that. I think it might be hopefully very interesting to you after this presentation. So at the stage set there, let's take a look at the 3 stages. Now again, you will be at different points on these dimensions. So I don't expect anybody to be all stage 1, 2, or 3. It'll be a mix, and that's what makes it a continuum, even though I've put some stages on it to help us focus on it. So stage 1, you can think of as almost what my job was in 2010, and what your job was in 2010 if you were doing Cognos. The BI team's focus was reports. When you talked about, that was like the unit that you focused on, was the report catalog that you offered. And everything that you talked about was about what reports do we have, what reports should we develop. It was kind of, that was the atomic unit, or the thing that you were looking to deliver, right? The thing that you were concerned about was reports. The toolkit, of course, is Cognos 10. Now back in 2010, was Cognos 10 even out yet? I think it was, but just barely if it was. We're not talking, we're talking about the Cognos 10 toolkit if you're in this stage, even if you're on Cognos 11. So what does that mean? Maybe you upgraded to Cognos 11 in 2016 when it was still brand new. But if you're still using Framework Manager, Transformer, and Report Authoring, and you're not using anything else, and your users aren't using anything else, you're using the Cognos 10 toolkit in reality, even though you're on 11. And if you are in that position, there's absolutely no reason to feel bad, because Cognos 10 is maybe the most successful. Cognos 8 and 10 are maybe the most successful BI tools ever. They're certainly at the top of the pantheon if you look at the history of our industry. And so that's a good place to be, but there are kind of better places to be now, or to season into that. And that's what our conversation today is to help you do. Self-service is you export data to Excel. It's just a pipeline to Excel. The workflow in stage 1 tends to be management dictates and BI team builds. So a lot of times in stage 1, you may hear ideas from your end users, but nobody has the, like your consumers, the people consume your reports, but they can't really on their own put in a request to the BI team and have you guys deliver it. Maybe tweaks, but when it comes to actually building new content, management tells the BI team what they want and the BI team builds those things. And of course, that never goes away. Management is always, and executives are always a key audience for us, but we'll see over the course of today's presentation how that changes. The data sources in stage 1 are often in ERP, CRM, or other source systems. Maybe you have a light homegrown warehouse, but oftentimes in stage one, it is, hey, we're just pulling our PeopleSoft tables in directly, right? And we all know how challenging that can be. The design principles here are lists and crosstabs. And this is partially because that's the sophistication of your user community. They run in and they put in prompts and they get a list. But this is also because at stage one, this is how you enable self-service, is you give someone a list and they export it to Excel. And design philosophy here, I would call extreme waterfall. It's very typically, it's very just based around the waterfall design philosophy, and not a whole lot of agility. Very strict controls over who can do what where the assumption is usually no one can do anything but the BI team. That's stage one. In stage two, what I find is that the BI team shifts to start thinking about departments instead of individual reports. And this is an important philosophical shift, where you're no longer thinking about just these objects that I deliver to people, but you're starting to ask, what does supply chain need? What does sales need? What does finance need? And that becomes the unit of concern for the BI team. How do I serve the departments best, rather than, are my reports as good as they could be? And it's really a huge level up. I will tell you, if you find yourself at that stage one when it comes to BI team focus, getting to this level will unlock a lot for your BI team when you start to think about what you offer as almost a suite of products or features to a department rather than individual reports. The toolkit here tends to still be reporting. Now, maybe you're trying to do more interactive stuff. This traditionally would be where we start to do an active report, although I wouldn't recommend you build any new active reports today. Certainly, if you have them, there's no reason to get rid of them. It's worth maintaining them. But this is still basically reporting, but you're starting to tinker with other tools. You, on the BI team, are maybe kicking the tires on data modules and dashboards. And maybe you've used Explorer yourself a little bit. And maybe you've given a few users access to other tools. Certain users may be given access to dashboards as part of self-service, right? So we're starting to think about what can we do with all these capabilities, but we don't have a comprehensive plan for it. And at stage two, it's certainly not, hey, all 1,100 of our users have access to dashboards. Now, maybe you never want to get to that point where all 1,100 users have access to dashboards, and that's a totally valid decision to make. But to throw it out there, it is an option, and there are people who do it. The workflow here is still, the work is being done by the BI team, but it does open up a little bit to where when you get this department focus, the power users in the departments start to have more input, right? Where they have the ability to come to you and say, hey, I'd really like this new report. And they don't always have to get management approval for that. And you don't always have to get management approval to build it, because your philosophical approach has shifted from we manage a suite of reports to we manage the relationship and the reporting for a department. You have a lot more freedom to work with those department, those power users and department level management rather than strictly executives or higher level management. The data source here at stage two, if you have a really good enterprise data warehouse, whether it's you're using Informatica or Data Stage or whatever Microsoft calls SSIS nowadays, if you have a real EDW, you're probably at stage two. You may still reference the ERP or the source systems for items that you need that aren't in the EDW, but that's kind of the realm of things that are being pulled into the enterprise BI platform. And as far as your design principles, it's still mostly lists and crosstabs, but you're starting to get into more interactivity, more visualizations. And the waterfall philosophy is usually still what I find at stage two, but it becomes a lot less strict. You start to say, okay, building new reports has to go through a really stringent design process, but if someone just wants to change, like, hey, we want to add 2 columns to this report and the data's already in the EDW, you know what, we're just going to do it, right? We're going to document it, but we're just going to do it. That often is what I find kind of at stage two. So at stage three, this really, to me, is where you should be shooting for in 2020, where we still maintain the best of what we had before, but we're really operating in a very modern way. The key to this, and I'm really going to hammer this going forward, so buckle up, but the key to this is the BI team focus shifts from departments to personas. And what that means is you're still going to think about what does finance need, what does supply chain need, et cetera, but because you're going to start shifting a lot of the low to medium complexity development work out of the BI team and into your end users, you'll also shift your thinking to who are my end users? How do they cluster together? If I have 1,000 end users, if we were to imagine we had an AI that categorized end users, this is actually something I'm working on for our Thrive product, by the way, but if we had an AI that categorized end users and we did a k-mean cluster and built a scatter plot, right? They would naturally cluster together. So each one of those is a persona, and you start to ask yourself, how do I serve those personas? And those personas will go across your organization. You will find the power user persona exists in finance and supply chain and sales. And because you are pushing the low to medium complexity work out, instead of thinking about how do I serve the finance power user versus the supply chain power user, you come up with the power user persona and you empower that person to do the low to medium complexity work. And I have you may be thinking, yeah, I've tried to do self-service in the past. It was sort of successful or something like that. I have, and for the rest of the presentation, we're going to talk about what is the approach you take to make this work, the persona-based approach to get to stage 3. The toolkit in stage 3 is if Cognos has it, you use it, right? That doesn't mean everyone uses it, but if it's there, you've come up with a way to incorporate it into your practice. I have a client in Florida who is using making great use of the Jupyter notebooks that we saw earlier today, and is doing not just data science with it, but data cleansing and API connections, piping API data into Cognos, doing all of that because Jupyter gives you access to Python, and Python gives you access to the world, right? So finding a way to incorporate those things. Self-service here is broadly available. The BI team manages the BI practice, and development is distributed. That doesn't mean, sometimes people ask me, well, I'm a report developer. What do I do in this world? You develop reports. That's what you do. But you're developing the best, most important, highest value reports with critical governance requirements and critical data requirements that have the biggest audience and go to the most important people. That's what you're doing. A lot of the other stuff is being distributed to the personas in your organization. The data sources here are your EDW plus your source systems, plus you're piping maybe API data in using Jupyter notebooks, you're connecting to apps, and you're incorporating Excel. We need to get a lot less afraid of Excel in the enterprise BI world, because so much of our, unfortunately, so much of our key information is walled up in Excel within our organizations. And so let's pipe it into Cognos so we can take advantage of it. Our design principles shift to be highly visual, but there's still a bedrock of lists and crosstabs, especially for operational reporting. If your salespeople need a report every morning of the 15 accounts that we have determined they should call today, they need a list, right? They don't need a scatter plot and Marimekko chart, right? They just need a list. So you're still giving people lists. And our design philosophy here is much more agile. I would say mostly agile, but waterfall still has a place. I'm not in favor of just tossing it out the window. It is oftentimes good for managing really big projects, or like maybe you have a waterfall project, but it's got little agile work streams in it. Oftentimes I see too. So the question is, how do we get there, right? This sounds great. This is what everybody always tells me they want to do, but nobody knows how to get there. And oftentimes what I find people do is they focus on one thing. Like they get really focused on the toolkit very commonly. And they say, I need to get people using dashboards and data modules. And so they come up with a plan to do that. But they haven't thought about all of this other stuff. And oftentimes that plan, it doesn't fail, but they often come away from it not feeling really jazzed, like they had a huge victory, right? Because it doesn't catch on maybe like they hoped or intended. And that's because you haven't taken all of this into account. Now, taking all of this into account is challenging. And you may look at this and say, well, it's like moving a mountain to get all of this done at once. And it is, but that is where the personas comes into play. And that's what I want to talk about for the rest of the presentation today, is the modern approach to BI, the stage 3 Cognos, which is all about a persona-based approach. And I will tell you where we came up with this is really when we started developing our in-house products like Thrive or the data module conversion that I showed you earlier today. I had to learn how to be a product manager. I had no idea. I'm a BIDW guy, but that kind of fell under my purview, and I had to learn how to do that. And I started making connections to how do you manage products, the kind of the product and software building approach that we've come to, and I started making all these connections to business intelligence, and I started realizing that you could treat your enterprise BI this way, and that's what this is all about. So it's all about identifying your target personas, defining those underserved needs, and determining what value that you can offer based on those needs. Only then do you start to think about what feature delivers the value. So you're not going to start with, I'd like people to use dashboards. You're going to start with, who are my personas, identify who they are, and then start to ask, what do these people need? And if your target persona, if you have a persona that needs dashboards, you offer dashboards. If you don't, you don't, right? That's how you learn, who do I give access to the different Cognos features to? Once you've figured out what features deliver the value that you have targeted, then you design a user experience to match, and you measure and repeat. So what does that look like? Identifying your target personas is the foundation of everything you're going to do. So you're going to look at your user community, and you're going to come up with profiles of who they are, right? Demographic information, psychographic, behavioral, needs-based. From that, you're going to come up with some likely personas that you think exist in your organization. Now, everybody's organization is unique, but we often find that there's a lot of overlap. So you're going to have power users. You're going to have casual users or consumers. You're going to have executives, right? They need very different things out of your platform. And you're actually going to go out, and this is what I truly do this, and I've done this with customers. You go out and you actually identify, so you come up with the likely personas, and you're going to come up with you're going to come up with what you think that persona looks like. So here's one that I use, right? That I've actually used in the past, Larry the power user. And you can see I have what Larry likes, he doesn't like, who he trusts, who he has influence over, what his goals are, his challenges. I have a description. So, Larry's a financial analyst who helps prepare regular monthly, quarterly, and yearly reporting. He handles ad hoc data requests. He's called on from time to time to help with projects. He's a real Excel wizard. He has some shadow IT responsibilities. So this is who we think Larry is. And we come up with who we think our personas are. This is almost a hypothesis, right? And that's really what we're doing here when we move on to defining the underserved needs. We develop a hypothesis about what would benefit each persona. We formulate them as a series of statements, and then we actually go out and conduct interviews with our users and ask them. We show them the statements, so we might come up with 15 or 20. I recently did this for our Thrive product. Some of you may have even participated in that, where you go out and you ask, what does the statement mean to you? How might it help you? How valuable would this benefit be, and why? You go through each statement for your persona. And I should mention, and I neglected to mention, the way to do this that makes it easy is you come up with all your persona hypotheses, who they all are. Maybe you have 3 or 5. I wouldn't have more than 5. If you have more than 5, you're slicing it too thin. And then you just focus on one. So you might just say, okay, we've got these 5 personas. We're just going to focus on Larry the power user, right? Then you go out and you define the underserved needs of Larry the power user via this interview process. And then you categorize that, right? So you're going to look at something like, in this case, let's say we went on and we talked to Larry. And it's very important that when you come up with your persona, that you actually build one of these, a document like this. And it's also very important that you don't put a real person's name on it, right? So if Larry is a real person in your company, do not put Larry, come up with some other name, because it'll make Larry feel really weird. But you come up here and you say, okay, what are the underserved needs of this persona? You do the interview, you look at the statements, you talk to him about each statement, you get qualitative and quantitative info about it. So you might ask him to score each statement and then give you write down what he says about it, why he thinks it's important. And then what you're going to do is you're going to categorize them. So in this case, we're talking about Larry, and we might say, okay, well, the things that Larry marked as needs, which you see on the right-hand side of this table, are he wants to complete tasks without IT permission, utilize his own data. He wants to easily share content. He wants to automate repetitive tasks. He wants to quickly answer data questions, and he wants to have lots of visualization options. Those were his top needs. So maybe of the 15 items, these were the things that were really moving to Larry. And the rest of those items are hypotheses about what he would like. We set them aside and we focus on the top ones. And then we categorize them. We see, is there a commonality between these and what benefit Larry's getting from it? So for example, the first three, complete tasks without IT permission, utilize my own data sources, and easily share content, we might bucket them together into a benefit called work independently. So the power users in our organization want to work independently, right? That's one of the benefits. The next benefit would be, we bucketize automate repetitive tasks and quickly answer data requests into save time. And then finally, have lots of visualization options. We might say that benefit is use cool software. So now we know what is it that our power users are looking at from Cognos and from us that we can give them that is going to make them feel like, wow, my analytics team is really delivering what I need. What it's going to be for those power users is they need to be able to work independently, save time, and use cool software. If we can do that, we'll know that that user persona is going to love what it is that we're offering. The next thing we need to do, and this can be a challenge, but we need to ask ourselves, we need to align the value to what we can offer, right? So in this case, we look at what is it that Larry, the power user, has access to. And again, this is not just one person. Ideally, we've interviewed multiple people, and this is our persona. So we ask ourselves, what do the Larrys of the world have access to? And can we offer more value through Cognos than what he can get from his other options, right? And we have to ask ourselves both what we're offering today and what we can offer. So if you look at this chart, you'll see work independently I have marked as low for Cognos, high for Excel, and medium for Tableau. Cognos can offer a very high degree of independence to your end users. But the question is, do you offer that to them, right? So you're going to ask yourself, well, Larry is looking for these benefits. Do I currently offer it? Maybe I don't let him work independently at all in Cognos, right? So what I'm offering today is low. Now you have to ask yourself, can I offer more value? Can I offer him the ability to work independently? Can I turn that low score for work independently into a high? If the answer is yes, and a combination of changing our policies and changing our security and giving people training, if we can get the Cognos scores higher than their other options, then we know that we've got the benefits aligned, that we can offer high value, and we should proceed with modernizing this person's experience. But we have to be honest. If we have the rules of Cognos are no one's allowed to work independently, and that's just the rule, then we can't raise this score to a high. And if we determine that Excel or Tableau or whatever else is a better fit for this persona, we back off for now, right? And we choose a different persona to try to do this process with and proceed forward with. That doesn't mean we give up on the power users, but it means we have some internal work to do to show our power, to get to the point where we can offer our power users high value. Now I know I'm running short on time, so I'm going to blaze through this. At this point, we align features to value. So at this point, we have not, you notice, I talked about how people often start with, well, what I'd really like is I'd like people doing data modules. We don't start with that. We don't even think about that really until we get to this stage. We've determined that We know what the benefits for the power users are. We can offer those benefits, and now we align the Cognos features to those benefits. So you can see that here, right? What do we turn on in Cognos to work independently? Excel uploads, dashboards, data modules, report authoring. Sometimes people freak out when we say, yeah, give them report authoring, but remember, these are power users. We want to give them everything. A different persona for sure is not going to get report authoring. Consumers, no way. They're not going to get report authoring or data modules, probably. But your power users do. So you can see here we align the features to the benefits, and then we design a user experience that can deliver all those benefits. And that is not just something within Cognos, right? That is a total experience. So that's, yes, we give him the features that he wants, but we also put together enablement tailored for this persona, support tailored for this persona. So maybe our power users have a rapid ticketing process. They go in through a different ticketing portal, or their tickets get prioritized or something like that. Or maybe we let them develop and prod, but only for their departments, something like that, right? In this example, this is what we would offer the power users in order to support these features and these benefits, right? We're going to offer something different to someone else. We're not going to put too many rules on this persona. We're going to have lots of communication. We're going to let him do lots of stuff in Cognos, but we're also going to force him to take some data policy training, and we're going to make sure that he understands, he or she, I'm calling him Larry, but we're going to make sure that they understand that, if they mess up and they break our data policy rules, they can have these privileges revoked. And then the final thing would be we measure and repeat. So we go live again with just this persona. Everyone else is still experiencing, stage 1 or stage 2 Cognos, but for just this persona, we're going to do stage 3 Cognos. We communicate like crazy with them. We monitor what they're doing. We gauge our success or failure, determine how well it went, and then we repeat with the next persona. So now maybe we go to executives, maybe we go to consumers, right? And then we level them up to stage 3 Cognos, and we just keep rolling through until all 3 to 5 personas are done. And at the end of that, you will have a brand new modern enterprise analytics experience for everyone in the company that is based on Cognos, right? And that where you can centralize as much of it into your enterprise reporting platform as possible, while still being mindful that, of course, people may occasionally need to use other tools. And at this point, when you have this sort of experience for them, you'll know the reason they're using Tableau is because they want to do something that you're not prepared to offer, but you are offering them as much as Cognos can offer and as much as your team can offer. And that's the idea behind this. This is the process we use to build Thrive. And this is also what Thrive is for supporting this. So in the name of finishing on time, I'll wrap up there. I see it's 4:30. I'll go ahead and wrap up there. I'm just reading through some of the comments here. So that's what we have. And I will see if there are any comments. I'll answer them in the chat. And then overall, I hope this was interesting, gave you something to think about it. If you want to talk about it further, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Or email me, or go to pmsquare.com and check out what we have to offer here. This is our approach to BI modernization. So if you're interested in BI modernization and what that would look like from PM Square, this is how we go about doing it. So I'll go ahead and wrap up there. Thank everybody again for the time, and turn it back over to our MCs. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ryan. That was awesome. That was awesome. And in marketing or in digital advertising, it's called finding your perfect customer and going through that. So it's a great approach to use. We're going to do a little bit of a skipperoo, and we're just going to jump directly into the communities. So Marie, go for it.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to spend about 10 minutes going over IBM Community. I believe this was already out here, but it's the revamped version. So it's a little bit easier to navigate. So what it is, if you've never seen it before, it is a collaborative space for IBM users. You can share knowledge using, there's forums, blogs, file sharing, and face-to-face networking. There's 4 simple steps to get started. You can obviously go along with me on your own machines if you want, or just watch and sign in later. The first is to navigate to the page. So it's community.ibm.com. When you're in here, you can navigate all the content without signing in or being a member of a group, but there are some benefits to signing in, which I'll share with you. The content itself looks exactly the same whether you're signed in or not. So over here, choose your little meeple, click sign in. It'll ask for your IBM ID. If you do not have an IBM ID, you can create one. It's free, it's simple. Just click this create an IBM ID. You'll go through a few steps, get a validation email, and be on your way to signing in. So I'm just going to switch over to my other browser where I'm already signed in. So as you can see, once I'm signed in here, the only difference really is that this left panel now has my profile information. And I'll just really quickly share here. I have a picture, my location. There are some points and badges that you'll get based on your contributions to the community. So I've made a whole 25 points based on what I've contributed. And then I have some badges. If you're competitive, they do have a little, I guess, competition here to see who can get the most points. I guarantee I will not be in the top 6, so you'll never see my face there. From here, the communities that are available are all on the top left under this drop down where it says community. And these are all kind of topic based. So there's business analytics, Cloud Pak for data, data science, and so on. For our purposes, or at least my personal purposes, I'm going to select business analytics. So this, again, community covers this specific topic. And then within the community, there are individual topic groups. In this particular case, on this horizontal panel at the top, there's 3 topic groups under business analytics: Cognos Analytics, Cognos Controller, and Planning Analytics. I don't use Planning Analytics or Cognos Controller, so I'm going to select Cognos Analytics. And within this topic group, then, there are discussions, library, blogs, events, and members. And essentially, you can go into each of those, or if you're like me and I just kind of want to see what's the latest and greatest on all of them, they've put in these cards. So the latest posts will show up here, the latest articles will show up here, latest files, and then if there's any upcoming events related to this topic group, you'll see those here. And again, you can click on any of these to get more details. If you are wanting to join this topic group, I've already joined this one, so you won't see it. But if I were to choose a different topic group that I have not joined yet, there will be a little join group. It's very simple. You click that, and essentially, again, the content won't change, but on your profile, there'll be a quick link to go into that group in the future. Let me go back into the Cognos Analytics group, which I'm already a member of. From here, you can actually change some settings in here. So right now, I'm getting a daily digest of what has been, I guess, what's new each day that's put into the community. You could change that to be real time if you're really wanted lots of emails, or you can say, I don't want any emails from here. And obviously, you can change that as you go based on what you're looking at. There are also user groups within the business analytics community. And if you go here, you'll actually find a Wisconsin user group. I believe there's an Illinois one coming soon. When you click within the user group, you'll get information on, in this, again, is mine. There's nothing in here really. I did post the agenda, but I'm hoping to be able to use this as another communication venue outside of email and LinkedIn to keep our user group kind of informed of what's going on, to have discussions outside of the user groups. So I could see, like, if there's follow-up questions, how do we get that out to everyone? This would be one opportunity to use that. Let's see. I think that was most of what I wanted to cover. Again, any of these communities, it's the same setup. So whether you click on business analytics or data science, you're going to have the same layout on here, which makes it really easy to navigate because it looks the same. You will notice I went up one level. So instead of being at that lower topic group of Cognos Analytics, I kind of went back up to the business analytics group. And this is now going to have some cards in here that are at that higher level. So there's product updates, there's a tip of the week, there's some trending information. And then down here is those topic groups. You can join this way as well. You can start your own user group. So Alan, you can create your user group this way. Then there's some events and articles that you can read through. There's a lot of information out here, I will say. Like, it's kind of overwhelming at first, but just get in there and play around. And I think it's going to be a really useful way to kind of stay informed of what's going on and just be able to connect with others that are using the same tools as you are. So that is my quick overview of IBM Communities. Oh, and the points and badges, if you're curious, when you go into your profile, you can go and see specifically like what are my points and what are my badges. I don't think you get anything for it other than you can pat yourself on the back. So that was just one extra thing I wanted to add. All right, so I think the next thing is the UltiPro BI, which, sorry, business objects, it's always, that's what's comes out.
You said the word that needs not be mentioned.
Sorry about that.
No.
So Alan, go ahead when you're ready. I'll stop presenting.
Yep, stop presenting. Let me see if I can share. Show my screen. Here we go. Okay, can everybody see the screen? Oh, it's pausing. All right. Why don't we just do it? I love that it's pausing. Hang on one second. Technical difficulties.
Okay, we can see it now.
Okay, you can see it now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Marie, thank you so much. I definitely will be joining the communities and we'll be putting a user group for Illinois there. Thank you for letting me know about that. Yeah, we've definitely found that LinkedIn is not doing great in terms of people actually paying attention or getting notifications. I was just talking to a few people offline and they weren't aware because they never check LinkedIn. So maybe this will be another way to communicate. What we wanted to do kind of, or in the spirit of helping everybody, is kind of introduce you, hey, wrong one, there we go. Introduce you to a tool if you're not familiar with it. There is a software called Ultimate Software. It just merged with Cognos. It's been around since 1993. They have human capital management software, and the specific software package that they're using is called UltiPro. I came across it in a number of customers when I was doing Cognos, and then I knew that, hey, I think these guys have Cognos in the background. And then I went actually to consult with Ultimate Software, and I did that for 14 months or more. And then I started incorporating it into my business. And I wanted to share that with you because if you're not familiar with it, and if your company is using it, you can start learning it, and then it can become a niche. Cool thing about it is, as we all know, within BI, some of the rates have been going down. Hence one of the reasons why we wanted to show you TM1 is because those rates have been good. You want to be creating niches for yourself, and if Ultimate Software is something that you're interested in, it can be a niche. It certainly became one for me. So as you can see by this particular slide, this is actually something that Ulti has on their website. And it looks very, very familiar to something that Ryan was just showing in the beginning of our workshop. So it's Cognos. I can't show you any of the customer profiles, but anytime you would log into the ultimate software environment, UltiPro, you would see, in addition to all the other HCM information, you would see business intelligence. And guess what happens when you click on it? You get to Cognos. They're on a definitely, not an updated version. They're on 11.09 at the moment. We'll see when and to what they upgrade. But what you're going to find is that all of your skills in Cognos Analytics are skills that are very applicable, and you can use it because it's the same Cognos that we know and love. The only difference is now you're dealing with specific data. So if you have access to ultimate software in your organization, or you're working for a client and you see it there, become familiar with it. It's not that difficult. What I find is that in working, you have to do a lot of joins. So it's mostly reporting, obviously, and you have to do a lot of joins because in their packages, there are many areas that don't necessarily talk to each other cleanly. And when you're dealing with human resources type of data, and you're dealing with benefits, or you're dealing with deductions, payroll data, you're going to have to be doing some joins. But in reality, it's not that complex, and most of us have done it for years, and we know how to build reports. And this is just another data set. Once you become familiar with it, then you can use it as a niche. And from my experience, my contract with Ultimate Software ended, and I kind of was deciding what it is that I wanted to do. I have an HR background, so I thought maybe just go away from BI in general and go into human resources. But I like my niche, and I like doing both. And this gave me the opportunity to do that. So I started reaching out to customers of Ultimate Software and offering them services. And knock on wood, aside from a couple of months that were dead during COVID slowdown, things are starting to pick up, and I'm getting more directly with the clients, doing kind of what I love, which is business intelligence, Cognos, and human resources combined. It could be a niche for you. I see there might be a question. Can I adjust my perspective? So on my side, it shows the slide fully. When I'm showing it, it doesn't.
We can see like the UltiPro screenshot is a little cut off, and your words don't make sense.
Really? So it's a little weird. So let's do it this way. I know that the slide deck is already available to Joel. Joel, would you mind sharing, and I'll kind of make sure that folks see it as I backtrack through it. But in essence, kind of is, hey, Ultimate Software is there. You have that available to you, and while Joel is switching. Thank you. So everybody can see this. This is better right now?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, well, there's a pro versus not, so thank you, Joel. And again, this is what I was talking about, right? So this image looks very familiar to us because we've been there before. We've done that. And Ultimate Software is just using Cognos on its back end. There are some questions of what's going to happen now that it merged with Chronos. Chronos has Cognos on the back end for one of its products and not for the others, while as Ultimate Software does. So we'll find out how it shakes out, but it can be a really good niche for you. Can we go to the next slide, Joel? Thank you. And again, this was just showing that when you're going, it's the Ultimate Software and UltiPro is a web tool. So you are accessing it through the web portal, and it has a lot of information that's specific to HR. So you can see all of your employee profiles, what jobs they had, what were their paychecks, what were their benefits, what were their deductions, what were their reviews. It's a human resources software. It's really, really good. It's a leader in the industry. And then you're going to see a link to business intelligence. And that goes to the next slide, which is Cognos that we love. Next slide, Joe, please. thanks. It's Cognos 11.0.9. You've seen it before. You've done it before. Those are actually some of the reports that I created for one of my clients just last week. So it's something that you can do. You can create another niche for yourself if that's of interest to you. And I can tell you for sure that the rates are a lot better than just saying, hey, I'm a straight Cognos developer. So more things for you to think about, whether you decide to expand your palette outside of Cognos and go into other BI tools, go into advanced analytics, go into TM1, or here's your other potential niche of going into a specific product. And we can actually expand on that because you don't have to necessarily go to UltiPro. There are other products that embed Cognos within it. And if you're going to be an expert in that product, or at least in the BI portion of it, then you can use that to market yourself. And all of us can benefit from having more choices and better rates. So that's why we wanted to share that with you. If there are any questions, I have a few minutes still, so just put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, Alan, this is Ryan. I would just say, I would second what you said. There are quite a few large companies where part of their software package is you click on a button that says BI or reporting or something like that, and what you get is Cognos. So for people who are looking to use their Cognos skills maybe in a different capacity, this is a good way to do it. And I know at PM Square, we have connections, at least some degree, to a lot of these companies. So I would second really what you said about the market in general and how specialization in something like Fiserv's implementation of Cognos or UltiPro's can be a really good thing.
Absolutely, thank you, Ryan. And again, it's just UltiPro on its own has 6,000 customers worldwide. So, and these are very large companies and mid-sized companies and smaller companies. So you do have a lot of options. So why don't we take, in closing, in essence, Marie and I wanted to thank you for joining. We appreciate it. We know this is a little awkward since we're not doing things in person. We're doing it virtually, but it's great to be able to be here with you. It's wonderful that IBM and PM Square has allowed us to do this. We really appreciate it. Marie, I believe you're going to be sending out a little survey to your folks at the end. Is that correct?
Yep. So the Wisconsin group attendees, assuming we can figure out who those people were, we'll be getting a survey. And then we do have the recording, which PM Square is going to be figuring out where we're going to store that. So we'll get that out as soon as we figure that out as well. I guess I just wanted to say a big thank you again to IBM and PM Square for helping us put this together and for delivering really great content. I think this went really, really well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and we have some time, so we can certainly use the remaining time to answer any questions. You may have some questions for any of the presenters. Go for it. Just throw them up into chat. We'll answer a few, and then we'll get back to you with the rest. Okay, I see some questions. Yeah. Thank you as well. Yes. I see some thank you, PM Square. Thank you, IBM. Absolutely. PM Square is awesome.
There is a question that came in. Can you talk more about the Explore and Notebook?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So the way to best understand those two tools is really Explore is all about data exploration, kind of like it's a guided data exploration studio almost within Cognos. So rather than just popping open a dashboard or a report and it's saying, okay, here are your columns, like good luck, right? I hope you build something cool. What Explore does is it actually does an analysis of the data itself, and lets you set like a target. Say I'm most interested in understanding budget variance, and then it says, okay, here are all the columns that are statistically related to budget variance, and here's how strong the relationships are, and would you like me to generate some visualizations for you related to budget variance, maybe by department or by product or project, or right? Automatically builds all that stuff. Explore is not intended necessarily as the output, so you're probably not going to find all that often that you're going to like, oh, here's an Explore I made for you end users, but it's more for you and the end users to dive into unfamiliar or even familiar data in a way that is guided by artificial intelligence and machine learning, so that you're not starting from a perspective of a blank canvas and having to hunt around to find meaningful relationships. It will automatically surface those meaningful relationships for you based on its statistical analysis of the data. It does data sampling of your data source, right? And then when you go in there, you have the guided experience, it automatically builds visualizations for you, it does all that sort of stuff. And then when you're done, you could just save that and send it to someone. But you can also take the visualizations that it generated and then embed them into dashboards for end user consumption. So that's the most common use case I see for it, is end users or people on the BI team will use it for that guided data exploration experience. And then when they find interesting relationships or impactful visualizations, they'll move them into the dashboarding interface for distribution purposes, is really how I see that most used. It's really cool. If you'd like a more fully featured explanation or demo of it, just reach out to us at PM Square, and I'm happy to hop on a call and show you. Notebooks are really, so the notebook technology, there's a different types of notebooks, and Jupyter is one of them. And what notebooks are really all about is it's putting in code and documentation for the code into one document. You can kind of think of it as like almost like a Word doc, except the Word doc includes code snippets that you can execute, right? So what I see these most commonly used for, and I should say the Jupyter notebook is not a piece of IBM technology. It's open source technology. It uses Python, and I think in 11.1.6 it supports the R kernel as well. So you can write Python or R within it. And IBM has just embedded that open source technology and then made it so that it can work with Cognos. It can read data from Cognos, and importantly, it can write data to Cognos. And what this really gets used for, there's a bread and butter use case that Jupyter gets used for all over the world, which is data science and statistical analysis, right? So this would be using Python to kind of do what we saw today. You pull in data, you do some cleansing and scrubbing of the data, and then you do some statistical analysis of the data and output that information back into Cognos for the purpose of displaying it in a dashboard or a report. And you can schedule that. So you build a Jupyter notebook that maybe pulls in some data from somewhere, does some data science, outputs a data set, and then you schedule it to run every morning so that every morning you have fresh data from your Jupyter notebook. That's just the tried and true bread and butter use case for Jupyter. Now, a lot of people look at that and they say, well, we're a BI team and the data science team is another team, honestly. And so, well, that's for them, it's not for us. So I'm not gonna learn that. I've heard that a lot. But the reality is Jupyter and Python can allow you to do some really amazing stuff that has nothing to do with data science. So let's say you have an important application at your company. Maybe it's a SaaS application, it's Workday, right? You guys use Workday, and there's no native connector for Cognos to Workday, but Workday does have a REST API. And so you can write a little Python application to interact with the Workday REST API, pull the data from Workday and put it into Cognos. And you're not doing data science there at all, really. What you're using is you're using the notebook to interact with another system that Cognos doesn't currently have a native interaction to. So almost everything has a REST API nowadays. Cognos has a REST API, and you can interact with those REST APIs via Python and Jupyter. So even if you're just a BI person and you're really, data science is not interesting to you or it's not your responsibility, there's still a really strong reason for you to look at what the notebook integration in Cognos can do, because a lot of stuff that today, you're going to say, oh, I need data from Workday, and what you're going to say is, okay, we got to do it, like, we got to find some way to get the data out of Workday, and then we're going to ETL it into the EDW, and then from there, we're going to model it into Cognos instead. And maybe that takes, if you're good at that, it takes maybe a week or two, right? And that's not a week or two. That's just to line up all the moving parts to get it done. I have customers where that would take a year for that to happen. And so what you're going to be able to do instead is you're going to look up the API documentation for Workday, and you on the BI team, you're just going to write your own Python to pull that data. Now it's in Cognos. You can merge it with your EDW data in a data module, and now in an afternoon, you've done what was going to take you somewhere between a week and a year because you use Jupyter. So that's my Jupyter pitch, and why, even if you're strictly a BI DW person, it's still something you should be very interested in. Whew, okay.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was a great question, and I'm always happy to talk to people about those features. Sridhar, I see you ask, can PM Square help with SDK development? Yes, we have some real SDK experts on this team, and our Thrive product is built in large part using the SDK. So if you have SDK questions, Sridhar, just email me, and I can take them from there and see what we can do.
It's also funny that, Ryan, you mentioned Workday, which is another HCM product.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's they're an interesting company. I know some people there, and they're interesting people. But yeah, I see Workday more and more. So.
All right. I think we're good. We've reached our 4 o'clock. We don't have any more questions. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.